This is your host, Stephen Brent Sargeant. I'm here today just to guys give you a quick hitter on resumes. Now, just a quick, quick disclaimer. I actually don't really believe in resumes at all. I think your personal brand, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram tells more of a story than your actual fabricated resumes. But I do realize as a recruiter, as a former hiring manager, that I also see the value in why resumes are so essential for some of our candidates that are looking specifically to get into AML compliance, especially when you're talking about cryptocurrency, blockchain, NFTs, DeFi. So these are some of my just standard thoughts when it comes to resumes and why I believe several of you that are looking to get into really great positions are probably missing the mark just a little bit and may not even be able to get past certain ATS systems or may not be able to get on top of that recruiter's desk, on top of the pile of candidates with similar, sometimes even less experience than you do, but a really strong resume I've seen make a huge difference. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I've written down. I think firstly, I don't know, I'm not even really looking at anybody, but can I say this is that the recruiter's not even reading your full resume? Is that a myth? I think we all know that. I don't want to say that out loud because I know I'm going to have those steadfast full-time recruiters saying, maybe you're not a full-time recruiter and that's why you're saying that, but I read all lines of a resume. To be quite honest, they probably don't. If they say that, I'm calling BS because they're probably getting hundreds of applicants. They may meet the full resume of, if they've shortlisted 4 or 5 and they read the full resumes of those people. But to be quite honest, most recruiters, most hiring managers are probably just skimming through the resume, looking for a couple checkpoints, looking to see what your recent employment history is, especially in cryptocurrency. They're probably going to check your experience. They're going to check your education, your background, your certifications to see if you have taken extra steps to learn more about cryptocurrency. But I can guarantee they're not reading line by line through your resume. So this is why I want to help you guys get insights on how to boost or amplify your resume to make sure the important parts are being highlighted as best as possible. Now, the first thing is make sure that your resume is not longer than 2 pages. I know that seems standard. I know some senior executive professionals, that might be the exception where they need 2 or 3 pages. But even then, I really don't see the value of including 3, 4, 5 pages on your resume, highlighting every role or responsibility that you've ever done. Once again, to my previous point, I don't think recruiters are reading the majority of the resume. So it's really just hit them with the positions that were important, the work experience that was important, the certification and trainings, and keep that to 2 pages. I think that's huge because nobody cares if you were a cashier at a grocery store 15 years ago. And I'm still seeing people include that type of work experience on their resume when it's really not material to the positions that they're applying for right now. This is one hack I've seen, and this is one I've done myself, is if you lack cryptocurrency experience, which most of us trying to get into the field do, what I did on the top of my resume is include a qualification or highlights of qualifications where I put all the cryptocurrency related trainings, certifications, even webinars at the top of my resume. That way, perception is you're looking at the resume as a recruiter, you're looking through it, and bam, you're hit with cryptocurrency right away. Then I would even the next section, I put my education or training before I put my work experience. At the end of the day, we want to put the work experience as far down as possible. This is my opinion. I think resume writers are very important. I'll talk about those later on in this conversation, and they may have a different strategy. But if I am someone that has zero cryptocurrency experience, I probably want to highlight as many things on the resume at the top so that the person that's reading it gets a sense of my cryptocurrency knowledge before getting into my traditional experience, which is what most of your resumes are going to actually look like. Also, I think it's important with this methodology and strategy that you take as many cryptocurrency related courses as possible. Now, this doesn't mean that you take the most expensive ones. Obviously, I'm always going to suggest my favorites, which is the chain analysis courses, just because, and the cipher trace course, because they have actual usage of the tool and the analytics tool that is being used by these cryptocurrency exchanges or the companies you're applying for. So it shows you have hands-on knowledge and practical knowledge of how to do an investigation. But other trainings are great. Self-studies like Manchester CF. There's a ton of other great courses. Manchester CF has one with Elliptic. Anchain has a quick one on Udemy. You can even put the webinars you've attended, whether that's TRM Labs, whether it's Solidus Labs that you read their report. There's no shortage coin firm. There's no shortage of great blockchain analytics companies that have some kind of content that you can at least show that you're absorbing during your journey to get a job. So that's my suggestion there. One of the basic things I think people are really struggling with is the naming convention. Put a proper naming convention on your resume. So I like to go with Steven Sargeant, maybe _ resume or / resume. And the reason why that's important is because when the recruiter or the hiring manager is downloading these resumes, it's super easy for them to organize it on their side. When you put sometimes just the position, or when you put not even the name, you're just putting resume, that's great. But when they're downloading 10, 15 resumes at a time and they're looking for which resume coincides with your name, sometimes that's easier when you're going through a traditional recruitment automation system or a CRM platform used by recruiters, but not all the time that happens. So it's so important to use proper naming convention, or at least something that's relevant to your name and the fact that it's a resume. Also, ensuring, please, if you are going format heavy on your resume, do not send it in a Word document. It is so important to have both a Word document when you need to maybe export some of that information into a company's recruitment process. But if you're just sending a resume via email, make sure you include it in PDF format. That way you don't lose all the alignment that you've spent so many hours working on. Because when it gets to the other side, if it's a Word document and the formatting goes out of whack, it's just a complete mess. And I'm going to guarantee that no recruiter or hiring manager is going to spend the time organizing it for you. So this is an important factor I've seen. Always PDF. And PDF just looks cleaner for some reason. It just looks more professional. And that's a strong suggestion by me. I would also think that, like, if the recruiters are all hiring managers are only going to be looking at certain sections in your resume, I would suggest highlighting awesome achievements and not just what your roles and responsibilities were for your organization. You know, whether you led a team of 5 or, conducted complex investigations. Although that's important, I like to highlight some cool things. Have you worked on any kind of projects like Project Protect, Project Participate, or any of the organizational public partnerships? Have you worked at working groups with international companies or organizations like Interpol, Europol, or the UN? These are really cool things that not everybody gets the opportunity to do. And it really highlights your ability to contribute with teams at the highest level. So if you have an opportunity, if you've done some creative things, I would strongly suggest you include them in your resume. Most importantly, I wouldn't listen to exactly what I'm saying here. I am not a professional resume writer. I have some great ones, great career coaches in my network. Clementine, that works out of Alberta, is amazing. Lama Yunus is an absolute assassin when it comes to creating a career and branding yourself as a top industry professional. I'll tag them in the post and in the show notes, but it's so important that you take this. Look at the investment. Let's just say it costs $500 to $1,000. I don't know how much a resume writer costs, but let's just say it's $500 to $1,000. To a person trying to get a job that seems so expensive. But imagine you get a resume that is 10 times better than everybody else's. And where do I get the 10 times better remark from? When I was recruiting for a position, I actually had one of my friends, Nilu, send me her resume. I was blown away by how good the resume was. It was literally 10 times better than any other resume. And I reached out to her. I'm like, oh my God, this is an amazing resume. She's like, oh, I'd love to take credit for it. But it was actually Clementine Crooks, who's a resume writer out of Alberta, that did it for her. Trust me, it's worth the investment. It doesn't seem like it, especially if you're strapped for cash, you're in between jobs, but the amount of interviews that I think you would get more than with a general resume, to be quite honest, even some of the suggestions I'm giving you probably aren't aligned with the resume writer. And it's probably best to seek a skilled professional that does this day in and day out. And more importantly, I see the strategies that they use to highlight things that recruiters and job hiring managers are looking for. Spend the money. This is one thing that nobody ever does. And the people that do it see such an enormous advantage. And I think this is where people need to start investing in themselves. It's a small investment, but I'm almost guaranteeing you it's going to get you more interviews, and it'll probably land you at a higher compensation because someone reading this resume at the other side is like, oh, this person's serious. This person's professional. If they did take this much pride and time in their resume, imagine what it would look like when they're working for us. Trust me, it changes the compensation. I feel like you'll get a couple extra thousand, maybe even tens of $1,000s more because you're leaving such a great impression. One other thing, highlight also the extras. As I said, highlight some of the extra things that you're doing. And in your career, focus on taking time to work on things outside of your current job. So I know there's going to be projects and glamour projects within your own organization, but there's a ton going on in the community, whether it's working groups. Malcolm Wright has a great working group that he was working with for the longest time, the digital group. And it was a great experience for me the short time I was there to learn from other professionals, to contribute some of my thoughts, to see what some of the industry's best are doing. Also, the ATII, Aaron Collar and team have volunteer, what they call expertise opportunities, where you can take some of your traditional or even crypto expertise and help volunteer that time for them to combat human trafficking, especially in the crypto side of things. So there's no shortage of opportunities if you look for them. Ways to amplify your resume, but more importantly, learn from other industry professionals and help create value outside of the organization that you work for. One thing I saw that was a little peculiar is that people's resumes didn't match their LinkedIn profile. And the one thing was their name. Now, I know people use a lot of different variations when it comes to their name. They might shorten it up when they're interacting with people. Their resume might have their full name, where their LinkedIn has a short form. Make sure you're consistent across the board. Your name on LinkedIn should be your name on your resume, should also be the name, if you can, in your email communications, because there's nothing more confusing than using different names for a variation of contact points with a recruiter. So you submit your resume, they reach out to you to set up an interview, and then you're emailing them with a different name, and they get really confused. And the last thing you ever want to do is confuse a recruiter or a hiring manager. You want to remove all friction as possible. And the name is the basics. Your name should be matching. Use the same name that you use on the naming convention on your resume too. So when you're saving your resume as a PDF or Word document, use the same name across the board. Make those changes immediately, because sometimes it confuses the recruiter to the point where they're not really willing to deal with somebody because they actually think something kind of, I don't know, fishy is going on, to be quite honest. I know it's not a detriment. Many recruiters are going to say it's not a deal breaker, but any kind of annoyance right now in the recruitment game, I think, is a slight against you. Also, consider doing extra things when it comes to your LinkedIn. Also, I've seen a lot of times where the work experience that's labeled on your resume is completely different than what it looks like on your LinkedIn profile, which is, once again, a little confusing. It should all be aligned. It doesn't have to be a copy paste job, but if you work at one employer on your resume, I should be able to kind of cross-reference that with your LinkedIn profile and see that same employer. If I don't see that, it's a little strange to me why you haven't included in one place. Your LinkedIn profile should be up to date. Most recruiters are searching to even get in touch with you because of your LinkedIn profile. And then secondly, every recruiter, I think, once they see your resume, is going to kind of search your name on LinkedIn, see what kind of activity that you have there. You want to make sure things are consistent. The last thing is just trying to bring out your personality as much as possible onto your resume. When I talked about Nilu's resume with her using a resume writer, I could actually feel her personality on the actual resume. I know that's a hard thing to explain. I'm not even going to try and teach it to you here. this is why you hire the professionals, is because they're able to kind of put that X factor onto your resume. And that's what makes it different than everybody else's. And an organized, a straightforward, a concise, and really professional resume is an absolute game changer. Even if you don't believe in resumes like me, I also realize that it's still part of the administrative process for 99% of the jobs. And even not even just jobs, whether you want to be a speaker somewhere or whether you want to join a working group, everyone's going to be asking you for your resume as like kind of like a placeholder. So if they're kind of showing you to other event coordinators or other people within the organization, they can say, hey, this is the resume. You want to make sure that resume could completely change every aspect of your career. And the people that are really struggling to find jobs are the people I feel that really don't have strong resumes. And to be quite honest, I've seen hundreds of resumes over the last 2 years as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, and I can really pick out 5 or 6 that absolutely blew me away. The majority of them were using a resume writer or career coach, but that aside, the rest of them, even if you didn't use a career coach, there were some basic things that they were missing in their resume. And those are the things I covered today. I hope this helps you. Reach out if you need any help. I do not review resumes. I actually hate looking at people's resumes because all I'm going to do is send you my resume because I think mine is decent. I'm sure maybe even the resume writers will disagree, but asking people to review your resume is a complete waste of time unless they're a professional resume writer, and B, just a complete waste of time. Nobody wants to look at your resume and add feedback. Maybe the 1% do, but even at that point, I think it's best to go to an unbiased professional and get some extra value. And at least implement some of these things that you can do on your own without a resume writer. Take care.